Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Every Zimbabwean out there should be by now sick and tired of hearing from our political leaders who, while they are in power, they fail to do even the most basic things that was expected of them. But the minute they lose their positions of power and authority, they become the fundi, defining what the problem is, and more significantly, the solution. Here is the late Dr. Morgan Tsvangirai explaining why Zimbabwe is a failed state.
It is a factor. The security establishment in this country is very much part of the ruling elite. And so they have to be taken into consideration. I think a mechanism has to be found if we have to develop a democratic culture where they and the political elite can sit down and actually say, what is the kind of Zimbabwe we want to see? So they are part of the solution, not part of the problem. Yeah.
Now, in Zanu PF, they've been making comments about the happenings in Zanu PF.
Yeah.
Maybe some have been said they prefer you did to succeed to succeed President Mugabe.
Yeah.
Do you think they have a role in internal party politics?
Which one?
The military.
Well, I mean, indirectly they have. If someone stands up and say the issue of corruption is becoming a security threat, how else do you want people to say they're involved? They are involved. They are part of the system. Nothing takes place in this country without the military involvement. Nothing.
So you were part of the government. How was your working relationship? We have seen some reports that the British think that Zanu PF can reform with him, made with with Mnangagwa as the president.
It's an impossible task. What we have is more of the same. Unless you change fundamentally the governance culture, it's just replacing one individual with another individual with the same character and same culture. So I think it is foolhardy to think that replacing Mugabe with Emerson Mnangagwa without the fundamental reforms that are needed to transform the institution of governance, then you're wasting your time. You just have the same perpetuation of the same culture.
Well, I'll stop it there. He is now trying to tell us that we need, if we're going to have meaningful change in Zimbabwe, we have got to change the rotten political culture. No one will dispute that. But the relevant question here is, he was in the government of national unity. The 2008 to 2013. That was the nation's golden opportunity to implement those reforms. Yet 5 years later, not even one token reform was implemented. Not one. The reason for it is very simple. Soon after the formation of the GNU, Mugabe bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and company. Every deputy minister, ministers, all the ministers, the two deputy prime ministers, and Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai himself, they all got an E-Class Mercedes Benz as part of their pack. They also got very generous salaries and allowances. Some of the allowances included being paid $1,000 for attending a cabinet meeting. And this is at a time when university lecturers were paid $100 a month. Morgan Tsvangirai himself got the US $4 million mansion. These are the perks that they got. And in return, Morgan Tsvangirai and company kicked reforms into the thicket, never to be retrieved. People asked, why are MDC leaders failing to implement reforms? And Zanu PF cronies boasted, Mazivanhu eMDC adzidza anyerere. In other words, MDC leaders have learned to enjoy the gravy train, good life. They're not going to rock the boat. Of course they were right. MDC leaders failed to implement even one token reform because they were comfortable, because they'd been bribed. And so all this talk about, oh, we have got to change the political culture. Why didn't you change it? You had 5 years, the best opportunity that the country has ever had to change Zimbabwe's political culture, and you failed to implement even one reform. I believe Morgan Tsvangirai in this case here is using the army in just the same way as Zanu PF leaders have often used sanctions. A convenient scapegoat. Here is a video that is often referred to when people are talking about the influence of the army. Army Commander Shinavashe speaking before, I think, the 2008 elections.
On the line is a stretch jacket.
Sorry, let me stop the video.
To make it very clear to all Zimbabwean citizens that the security organization will only stand in support of those political leaders that will pursue Zimbabwe's value, traditions, beliefs, for which thousands of lives were lost in pursuit of Zimbabwe's hard-won independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the national interest. To this end, let it be known that the highest office on the land is a straitjacket, whose occupant is expected to observe the objectives of the liberation struggle. We will therefore not accept, let alone support or salute anyone with a different agenda that threatens very existence of our sovereignty, our country, and our people. By the two crucial values, first and most important, any report and action designed to
need not play to the end. The truth of the matter is the army was just another leg another institution that has been abused by Zanu PF ruling elite to do their dirty work. Yes, the general is wearing his army uniform, but in truth, he is the one who is wearing the straitjacket. And it may just as well have, at the time, then President Robert Mugabe's image. The army has been used by Zanu PF ruling elite to do their dirty work, much the same way as the war veterans have been used by the Zanu PF ruling elite. If we fast forward the situation here, 2017, it was the same army that conducted the coup. And if they thought they were in control, how quickly they learned that they'd just been used. They were never in control. Yes, the then commander, Chiwenga, was made VP after the coup, 2017. 8 months later, in the 2018 elections, a few of his colleagues remained in government. But after those elections, Nangagwa and his cronies embarked on an exercise that was designed to isolate Chiwenga. There's no doubt that Chiwenga is just an empty shell. All those around him were loyal to him, whom he could count on in the army or in government, have been weeded out. He was used to do the dirty business. If the coup had failed, it was his neck that was going to be stretched. And now he's being discarded like a used toilet paper. Let's be very clear here. The army, it's not for the army to decide who the people should elect. This is a universal issue. As long as elections are free, fair, and credible, the army cannot step in and say, no, you do not represent the values of which the liberation struggle was fought for. One of those values of the liberation struggle was one man, one vote. That every Zimbabwean should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And to pretend that somehow the army has got to have a final say after the people have voted is idiotic. Nonsense. And Zulawashe knew it. And the script he was reading was written for him. He was the one wearing the straitjacket. And to go back to our friend Morgan, I would challenge him to come up with the evidence to show his claim that the army in any way stopped him and his MDC friends implement even one reform during the GNU. The army played no part in that. They did not stop Morgan Tsvangirai and company implementing reforms. And that is the truth. It's just using them now as an excuse for his failure. And I think the people of Zimbabwe should be smart enough to know that one of the problems we have in our Zimbabwe politics is that we have got politicians who say one thing when they're seeking office. And the minute they're in a position of power and authority, they forget what they promised. In Shona, we have got a saying that watuma bete kumkaka. The minute our politicians, on both sides of the political divide, they're in a position of power and authority, they forget what is it that they promised the nation they would do. Earlier on, I referred to Zanu PF cronies boasting that Mazivanhu eMDC adzidza anyerere. The truth of the matter is, the same can be said about them too. Ever since independence, Mugabe has bribed his fellow Zanu PF leaders so that they did his bidding. Margaret Dongo was right. In sheer frustration, she once called the Zanu PF ministers, MPs, senators, party leaders, army leaders, etc., vakazi va Mugabe. Because none of the Zanu PF leaders ever stood up to Mugabe, even on a matter that was clear-cut, like the Kukurawundi massacre. They all sat back. They were all quiet. Mugabe had bribed them with all the trappings of high office. They didn't want to rock the boat. We have a nation of individuals who, once they are in office, they forget what they're there for. And when they're out, they're once again the fundi on what needs to be done, just to win the people's confidence. We have got to be smarter than that. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.